Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Randy Bach. I'm, I guess, President, Chief Bottle Washer of the Newton Taxpayers Association. We have a great organization. I encourage you to come to our Facebook pages. We have two different ones. And connect with us. Let us know you're out there. The Newton Taxpayers Association, I think, came about because taxes are high, and we were the originators of the Prop 2.5 movement back in the early 80s, I believe it is. So we had some success, and we've been able to keep things reasonably in check through that mechanism. So if you think that things might get worse before they get better in terms of inflation and the needs of city governments, please connect with us. So that's preface. Anyway, I'm very honored and thrilled and excited to have a wonderful guest with us. Neil Glick is a foreigner. Actually, I got to say that at the outset. He is not from Newton. He's from Wellesley. We don't like to talk about it, but there's another town out there, and it's a little bit like The Simpsons with Springfield, and I forget the other town that is almost identical to Springfield, but they're arch rivals. Anyway, this animosity has not extended between us. Neil recently ran for school committee in Wellesley, which being kind of in the the anti-universe, like Superman has the kind of the negative, the inverse. They have their elections in March. I have no idea why, but just to be different. And he has some interesting exploits to talk about for running for school committee, if they call them the same thing. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to take up too much time because he has some real, battleground information, and he's up to date and up to speed on what's going on in the schools, plural, not just Newton, in this case Wellesley, but I think a lot of things carry over and a lot of similarities. So everybody please give your attention to Neil Glick.
Thank you, Randy. And yeah, I did have my visa checked at the border when I crossed into Newton, so yeah. I came in legally.
Yeah. I'm going to give one other brief intro. Neil is an attorney. He can explain what he does. I think he works with environmental law and land use. He has had kids in the Wellesley school system, and he has children now in the Wellesley school system, or child singular. And he's a good friend of mine as well. So I have found Neil completely knowledgeable, and I cede the floor to you. Can you just maybe start out with what led your interest in the schools, and/or what brought you to run for school committee?
Well, I didn't want to run for school committee. It was the furthest thing from my mind. But I have a fourth grader in the school system, and I saw what was going on, and I was really disturbed about some things. And I started to get together with some like-minded parents in Wellesley. We formed what was loosely called Wellesley Concerned Parents, and we started to try to dig into what was happening. And we weren't able to really find out much in a cooperative way. Then we did the usual things. We went to the school committee meetings and were, pushed away, and you get your 2 or 3 minutes to say whatever you want to say. They cut off your mic after 3 minutes, and they don't listen to a thing. So, but there was an open seat, and at the last minute, one of our potential candidates dropped out, and so I took up the mantle and decided to run at the last minute. And it was a wonderful adventure.
Well, that's the adventure part. It sounds like there was some struggle as well.
Yes.
So let's first see what were the things that. Well, I actually want to go back one step. I think people kind of focused in on the schools and became rather shocked and surprised about the schools during COVID-19. The kids were home, and there was a lot of learning done on Zoom,
yes,
and the equivalent. And all of a sudden, parents, a lot of them were at home as well, got to see things that went on in the schools. And the question became, and there's a book out, I'm pretty sure, if I get the title slightly wrong, I apologize, but it's Whose Children Are They? I can't remember the author, but I heard her on a podcast recently. But it's an excellent question. It used to be, everyone used to say, including on The Simpsons, "What about the children?" Everything, you want to do this, but what about the children? Well, this is another really good question. Whose children are they? Are they your kids to guide, or are you like donating their minds open sourced to be filled ad hoc by the school system? And what is that school system?
Well, that's a very good point, and I'll never forget going to a PTO meeting at which there was the principal of my son's school and one of the teachers. And the teacher kept saying during this meeting, "We have your children for 8 hours." And she kept repeating that. And I kept wanting to just, scream, "No, you don't have my children. My children are my children. They're my wife's children. It's our family. The school doesn't have them. We pay you to perform a service. The Wellesley taxpayers pay you to perform a service, to educate our children. We don't pay you to have them and to indoctrinate them." Mm-hmm. So it was a real eye-opener, and I think there is that attitude like, we have your children, we own them, and we are going to do as we will with them. And that's disconcerting.
Yeah. No, I was in public schools till 8th grade, 7th grade, and back then, 1,000 years ago, you remember dinosaurs were walking the earth?
Roam the earth, yes.
You remember that? Well, it's hard to tell. The kids don't even believe me when I tell them that. But I went to PS 81, prosaically named, Public School 81 in New York City, and I don't think this happened. I mean, we had teachers. We had about 30 kids per classroom, and the school itself had a principal. I remember kind of reading the masthead because at one point when I was in 5th grade, I had a special job organizing the kids, and I rang the bell and so forth. So I was in and out of the principal's office for good reasons, pretty much good reasons. And at the time, there was a school nurse, there was an assistant principal, a secretary, and there was really very little in the way of ancillary staff. I don't know what the budget was at the time, but it was also much more clear function. We learned stuff. I mean, I don't want to boast. Well, I know how to read and write.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. The kids do as well today, but there was very little extra stuff. There was not really the politicization of the classroom, I don't think, in the same way. We learned, music, we did this, this and that.
There wasn't the overt politicization back in the Stone Age when I went to school. And I'm a public school product. Unlike Randy, I didn't drop out in the 8th grade. I went all the way through high school in the public schools. But look, we need to teach our children about America, warts and all. I'm not against that, and I don't know any parents, frankly, who are. There were mistakes made in our country's history. There were injustices in our country's history. And probably those were not taught as much in my youth as they are and should be taught now. But we've gone way beyond that.
No, it's a very critical, the word critical is used and overused.
Right. I mean, here we are in the cradle of liberty. You can go down the street to Concord, Massachusetts, and see the Rood Bridge where the shot heard round the world happened in 1775. You can go to Boston and see where Crispus Attucks, an African American, was shot by the British in the Boston Massacre. You can see all these things, except our teachers are teaching that the country started in 1619.
Yeah.
There's this whole universe, this whole cosmos that's been created suddenly, frankly, in just the last several years that doesn't mesh with reality.
No, it doesn't comport with reality. I like to point out, if things were so horrible here, why are we, net immigrants? I mean, why are immigrants pouring in to our borders?
Right.
If they have paradises, and including socialist paradises elsewhere, and if we have such issues with race, and again, mind, I don't think there's a place on earth that doesn't have ethnic or racial strife. You look it up, whatever country you want, there are always going to be divisions. That's what people do. They coalesce, but they also make divisions, and sometimes divisions are created for them. But we have huge influx from African countries. So I think Nigerians are one of the major drivers of immigration, of legal immigration currently. And if things are so bad for blacks, why is it net immigration? I think either before, right around the Civil War, Liberia was formed as an expatriate country of the United States. Slaves, freed slaves went and formed a country, Liberia. I was talking with a patient just a few days ago, a native of Liberia, but he's emigrated here. So he has an American-ish name, kind of, like his last name's like Washington or Johnson, one of those very, kind of American names, not an African name. And he said, well, people would rather be here than in Liberia currently. And Liberia is one of the better places in Africa. But there's strife, there's division, there's war, there's all kinds of problems. For better, for worse, frankly for better, we've had one of the unique systems on Earth that gets duplicated elsewhere. We were very fortunate in the way things were created that we have some stopgaps and firewalls against some of the worst egregious aspects. But it did take a war. It took a civil war to help free the slaves and whatnot, and a lot of places didn't do that. A lot of places, were frankly worse and later. If you go through, I'm studying Brazil for my book, Overturning Zika, which you should buy, about the missed Zika epidemic and what happened there. But in Brazil, there was far more, of the African slaves brought to South America, Brazil in particular, and they were not freed till much later.
But again, this is not about race. This is about, and you mentioned divisiveness, division, and that's what's happening because our children are being taught that they belong in groups, in tribes, if you will, and you're either an oppressor because you are born with white privilege, or you're a victim.
Is that literally true?
Yes, it is literally true. When you get your hands on some of the...
How do you know this?
Well, because I've seen some of the curriculum.
Tell us how to go about finding this, and how did you?
Well, we got lucky. Somebody filed a Freedom of Information or a public records request, and it was denied. Well, it's never denied. What they do is they say, you have to pay us $11,000 or $13,000 for copying costs. But the school actually kind of made a mistake, and they gave some documents. And those documents were very clear about the flying of the display of the Black Lives Matter flag at my son's school, and the entire curriculum that went along with that. I mean, we didn't know that this curriculum existed. We weren't told about it. And it's based, it's not just race, it's based on the Howard Zinn project. Now, you might remember who Howard Zinn is.
Yeah, I think he was a Newton native.
Oh, well, okay. He's an avowed socialist, communist, whatever you want to call him. And he had very strong ideas about the nuclear family. He was against it. And then it's also morphed into a coalition between the Howard Zinn Foundation and an organization called BLM at School. And they have a whole curriculum, and it's very clear and it's very laid out. So yes, we found out about these divisiveness patterns.
But eternally we are told that critical race theory doesn't exist in the schools. Yes,
and I found out. First of all, it does. I mean, anybody who says it doesn't is using what Mark Twain used to call stretchers. Critical race theory is being taught in the schools. It's now sometimes being taught through the guise of another acronym called SEL, Social and Emotional Learning. But it's there. And the proof of the pudding for me was when I was accused while I was running for office by the Democratic Town Committee of being a bad candidate and a bad person to be on the school committee because I was against CRT, critical race theory, but then they said in the same sentence, of course critical race theory doesn't exist. It's not taught in Wellesley. So we have the paradox, conundrum, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, it might be an enigma.
Enigma, yes.
Could be
wrapped.
a mystery.
Wrapped in
like
an enigma.
like those burritos.
Yes.
I've seen those, the mystery.
Yes.
I'm just going to interject one thing that I actually heard on this topic, which is that they oftentimes are technically correct that there's no specific course called critical race theory. And we have to go back, critical race, the critical part actually is a Marxian term, Karl Marx, not the Groucho type. And it was to be critical of everything, to take down all the aspects of society, the bourgeois aspects. Now, you may not know this, but if you're sitting at home or watching this on your smartphone, or you're probably bourgeois. You have a job, you're paying taxes. At any rate, but the idea was to break all that up, to kind of like reformulate society so that we're not dependent on the family, we're not looking towards older religions. Everything's supposed to be new. And lo and behold, who's going to be in charge but the Marxists? And this has been tried a number of different times, Soviet Union, North Korea, Maoist China, and so forth. And it tends to lead to human misery and failure because for whatever reason, however we are constructed, or the opportunities that people get when they have ultimate power. Anyway, the critical race theory is not so much given as a specific course, but it does suffuse the curricula of teachers' colleges. And in order to teach in our schools, you need a teaching certificate, and this is a term of art and a credential that you need. If you were the Albert Einstein at age 40, master of physics and so forth, you could not go in and teach physics in our high school. Yeah. If you were Stephen Hawking at his height, or Elon Musk, you could not teach astrophysics or computer engineering unless you had the certificate.
And I should add, by the way, in terms of my credentials, I am an attorney, as Randy said, but in my misspent youth, I became a teacher, and I have a teacher certificate. And I can tell you that when I got my teacher certificate, I didn't have to learn anything about critical race theory. Now, you're right. Critical race theory it infuses. It's infused inside all the curriculum. But it would be one thing, Randy, if the schools were doing such a terrific job on academic subjects, and the critical race theory and social and emotional learning was a sideshow.
Right.
But it's not.
No.
I mean, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, you're a data guy, I'm a data guy. I mean, in Wellesley, we have lost the equivalent of an elementary school. Well over 300 students in the last families in the last couple of years have migrated out of the system, have voted with their feet. They don't want their kids in public school anymore. And that's because the schools are doing an absolute miserable job. We were number 4 in the Commonwealth in 2014. That wasn't that long ago. Number 4 rated in the Commonwealth, the high school was. We are now number 26, and it's falling like a rock. Or rising. I mean, the numbers are going up. And the middle school is now being ranked, and they're number 40-something, so that doesn't augur well for the future. So they're not doing, and what did they do? Again, Taxpayers Association, so I'll bring it back to taxes. They just asked for a raise. We are now spending more per pupil than most any other town in the Commonwealth. And they got it from town meeting, but they're losing their customers, the families,
people
and the
are voting
students.
with their feet.
They're hemorrhaging customers, and you'd think maybe they would want to do studies or something to find out, hey, why are people leaving the schools? No. Instead, what they're doing is they're doubling down on CRT and SEL, and they're claiming, and they say this, they're not shy about it. The principal of the middle school said, well, academics aren't really the be-all and end-all of of what we're trying to do. We're trying to educate the whole child, and the education of the whole child is.
No, I know. It would be as if somebody came to me for a sore throat or an ear infection, and I said, well, that's interesting, but let me tell you about my whatever fill in the blank political thing, and I kept that person there for the duration and build. Let's say it's the state, build Mass Health or Medicare or whatever, and I build government for it. I got paid, and but that's not what the person came for. The person came for a specific problem, which is ear infection.
And then you amputated their leg.
Well, that's another, yeah. And so I remember this is, my kids are adults now, and back in the day, same thing kind of happened, not quite as severely, but the times I've had windows into the schools, I'll give you one quick example. Art class, the kids were, this was during the George W. Bush era, they were painting anti-Bush slogans, and they were making placards for demonstrations. And this was independent of what the kids' politics were. The entire class was doing this. Yeah. And I talked to the teacher. I'm like, is there nothing else you can do in art class? I mean, my kid does, this particular child didn't know how to draw that much. They could do, I don't know, art techniques or art history or something like that. But instead, they were cadres. They were being seen not to fill their mind with the potential out in the world, Renaissance art or figures or so forth. They were being used for political purposes for the teachers. Now, if the
we're
teacher,
in the middle of an experiment.
If the teacher,
we're in the middle in Wellesley's case, about a 8-year experiment, and it isn't going well. I mean, by any metric, whether it's U.S. News and World Report, whether it's Boston Magazine, whether it's MCAS scores, whether it's a new one that just came out by Patch, called Niche, that ranked Wellesley behind Newton North and South, by the way, but also well behind Weston, Lexington, Belmont, Brookline, you name it. And these things have real life impacts on property values.
Absolutely.
And so what do? They double down on hiring 53, count it, 53 new administrators, not teachers, new administrators.
Now, it's an amazing thing, getting back to my public school experience, literally that was the staff. The teachers were there, and there was not an enormous number of, and I don't think human beings were far different. I mean, I think, people have always had issues, and there are times in which you might need therapy or help with English as a second language. I understand that. But the schools seem to be, if you look at the mastheads and you go online, and any of the schools have their staff within it, they're very, I think teachers form a minority of the hired staff within our schools. You can
and it's a declining minority.
You can fact check me on this.
It's a declining minority.
And amongst the other declining aspects are the numbers. We had, I forget exactly the number, between 12 and 18% diminished enrollment in our schools across the board since, I think, 2018. It's a very abrupt and marked drop. And the schools asked and got more money than they had in the budget before, but they keep calling it a shortfall because they didn't get what they wanted. Now, there are a lot of things I want in life. I don't always seem to get that. If I get more than I had before, but I don't get what I want, and without leaving Mick Jagger out of this, you may not always get what you want. You just might find you get what you need. Philosopher, poet, but it's in the Newton tab week after week. I see this as the shortfall, and I'm like, I can't yell at the newspaper, so I have you out there to talk to. But you have to follow up on this. So we're going to have only maybe 5 or 7 minutes left in this conversation, and it's been fascinating. I'd like Neil to come back perhaps, and you let us know. But what is there to do? What do we do, Neil?
Well, what we have to do is organize the parents in terms of the schools, and that's happening in Wellesley. I can say that more and more parents are getting aware of what's going on. There was this misconception, and it's bruited about in town, that we are still in the golden age of Wellesley schools. Well, people are starting to realize, whoops, we're not. And they look around at their neighbors who have put their kids in private school. They look around and they see the rankings published and all that stuff. So parents have to become more engaged. They have to become more involved, and they have to become, frankly, less gullible for what is dished out as the excuses for all these shortcomings. First it was COVID. And then it was, oh, well, we have to do, we can't teach to the test because that doesn't teach the whole child, all that stuff. Well, okay, but what parents need to do is get organized, get active, and we got 44% of the vote, having gone from 0 in what was basically a 5-week campaign in the middle of winter, because the election was on March 1st. And we got 44% of the vote, despite a lot of sort of dirty tricks against us. But we put a real dent in it. There are 2 seats open next year, and I believe concerned parents, and I don't mean just my organization, Wellesley Concerned Parents, but concerned parents, the numbers are growing, and that number of 44% is easily going to surpass.
All right, so
50%.
we're going to try to sum it all up.
Yep.
You have to be active. Where can people go to get information about the things you're talking about, the Freedom of Information Act, and just a quick question. You've had experience. You had a kind of an earlier generation of kids go through the schools. What's your experience talking to them from then till now? Not just the race stuff, but there's sexual stuff. There's all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
The curriculum. How do things pan out? And we just got to be brief.
Well, it's an excellent question, and I do have older children as well, and they've been through. My oldest son went through 4th grade through 12th grade in Wellesley, and he had a great experience in a lot of ways and a very good education. And his friends are appalled at what they're finding out now from their little siblings, or from their parents, or from what they see and read. Yes, there's really a backlash among old recent graduates. As far as Freedom of Information Act, which is in Massachusetts called the Public Records Act, it's a joke. You're not going to get a lot of information. What you really have to do, if you want information, is you have to run for school committee. You have to get people on there who are going to say no, who are going to listen. You have to pressure. In Wellesley, it's the select board, but in Newton, it would be the alderman or the mayor. You have to pressure them, and you have to show political might.
Are there any groups outside of running for school committee and so forth that you can recommend?
There are several national groups. Some of them are good. Some of them are, they're all good, but some of them are.
I'm familiar with one, FAIR. Have you heard of
FAIR? Is terrific.
Do you know their acronym? What it stands for?
I do not, but
it's spelled FAIR.
Yeah.
And so I think if you look it up, you should be able to find some footprint locally.
Right. No Left Turn is another one that is very good. That's again a national.
So I got another quick question. Are kids happier in the schools, just back then or now? This will be our last question of the day.
No, they're clearly not. I saw. I don't mean to be gross to finish off this wonderful conversation, but I saw a report the other day of a mother of an 11-year-old who literally vomited in class when he was being taught about anal sex. No, they're not happy. They're appalled. So
we're going to have to wrap up. This is it is a sad way to end the show, and I apologize for that. But this is the honest to God truth that's going on, and if you're watching this, you probably didn't have this experience, and your own memories of public schools and so forth are not what's going on now, and you have to relearn this and so forth. The Newton taxpayers, you're a taxpayer too, and every taxpayer's largest expenditure in every city in the Commonwealth is for the schools. You own these schools, and you have to figure out how to manage them. It's different, when you get a haircut or something like that, you can buy it and you go somewhere else. These schools stick with us, and we have to make sure they stay according to our needs. Whose children are they? They are our children. They're your children. So please pay attention and follow up, and we look forward to talking with you again. Thank you so much.